More jihadist terror threats. We're going to talk about it on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, thanks for being a part of the Hot Zone. The media is being dominated right now by news about the COVID virus, and I guess that's understandable, but that doesn't mean the terrorists are taking a day off. As a matter of fact, there have been quite a few terror attacks and attempted terror attacks over the last couple of months that you probably haven't heard about just because the COVID virus is dominating the airwaves. So we're going to bring in my good friend Todd Bensman to talk about some of these threats and to talk about what's being done about them. Todd, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
So tell me at first, let's talk about this potential terror attack that was thwarted over in Germany by there was like 5 guys, right? The Tajiks?
Right. So in Europe, we've had since 2015 an outbreak of migrants who have crossed in over the borders in the big crisis of 2015, 2016, and they turned on their jihadi neon sign and went to town, conducted bloody attacks from one end of the continent to the other after coming in on asylum claims right over the border. This started really with the Paris attacks and the Brussels attacks, and it's going all the way up to now. So there are 5 Tajikis from Tajikistan, which is a Muslim majority country right on the border with Afghanistan, to give you an idea of the neighborhood. They came in as asylum seekers. They formed a terror cell, and they were able to use their asylum claim to buy time to import weapons. So they had fully automatic weapons, and they had lots of ammunition for those weapons. They also were able to purchase bomb components, anti-personnel explosives, and the plan was to conduct attacks on 2 U.S. Air Force bases. Luckily, the German anti-terrorism police, and they're in the midst of COVID, those guys, so the whole country is sort of on lockdown, just like most of the rest of the Western world. But they conducted a series of dynamic raids across a certain area, and they swept up a whole bunch of jihadis, including these Tajikistanis, and busted them and ended the plot. So the American military forces stationed in Germany caught a very big break there. And also, I would point out that until now, these migrant border crossing terrorists in Europe have not really targeted American interests in Europe until now. And so we as a country ought to get on board with the Europeans to help them stop their border infiltration there, because now it matters to us. Their fight is our fight now.
So I also noticed that Germany just outlawed Hezbollah, which is kind of confusing to me. I mean, they're outlawing all Hezbollah activities in Germany. I didn't know that wasn't outlawed already. I mean, Hezbollah is a terror group, and they've been designated as a terror group for a long time. Were they actually able to have events and stuff in Germany before this? Do you know?
Well, the issue with Hezbollah is that while the United States has designated them a terrorist organization, lots of the European, more liberal political parties that are in power in Europe have more regarded them as a political entity, because they actually occupy seats in the Lebanese parliament. They're a political party and an actual political force there. So the Europeans have decided to go soft on Hezbollah all these years and regard them, kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt as opposed to the benefit of they're a terrorist group. So what's happened is, we've had a lot of activity with Hezbollah. There's been fundraising and weapons collections. And, Hezbollah has been closely aligned with Iran for years and years, and they've been fighting on behalf of the Syrian government for years during the civil war there. And so I think that this is a very good, albeit belated, move by the Germans. I think that everybody ought to do what the Germans did. There's still a bunch of European countries that don't regard Hezbollah as a terrorist group, but they are.
Right. Yeah, it'd be great if they would do that in Lebanon, where Hezbollah has, always been a threat to Israel. But incredible that they are only now getting around to that in Germany, given all of the terror attacks that they've had over there and that sort of thing. So how do you think the Muslim terrorists specifically are taking advantage of the coronavirus outbreak? I saw that Abdul Rahman in Syria, a jihadist commander over there, published on his Telegram page that was encouraging Iran to use infected patients of their own and send them around the world as biological weapons. That's exciting. Nice guy there. Have you seen any other ways that they are maybe taking advantage of it or cheering on the virus?
Yeah, I think they're certainly cheering it on. I just don't know how much of what we're hearing out of ISIS and these other groups is aspirational, sort of headline grabbing, recruitment-oriented propaganda, or actually real. So, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there are lone wolves out there who, if they had it, I've heard of ISIS guys, having it and claiming they're going to go spread it around. Some of those turned out not to be true. I just think it's maybe more aspirational. More importantly is that they would take advantage of the lockdowns and the reduction in public awareness and reporting that goes along with lockdowns, not just in Europe, but also in the United States, to maybe take advantage of less vigilance to conduct their terror attacks. I mean, look, the Tajikistani migrants who plotted that Air Force base, the double Air Force base attacks, certainly understood that they were acting at a time of national lockdown. They misjudged it. The anti-terrorism police were out and about, but there are probably plenty of societies where the public awareness and vigilance and reporting is way down. Yeah. And cops are staying home, and intelligence analysts are working from home, and people aren't out on the streets as much either. So I think that's a concern.
I have seen some articles that say that the ISIS specifically was kind of upping their game online and trying to do more online recruiting during this time because it's more difficult for them to travel. So, getting on an airplane to go someplace is not really in the cards at the moment. But so they're focusing more on the online space. Nevertheless, you talked about lone wolf attacks. Let's talk about the one that almost happened in Minnesota, was it? A guy working for the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting case, a kind of an unusual case in the fact that the FBI arrested a Pakistani doctor, a medical doctor, fully licensed, and actually trained as a surgeon. Kind of a really, especially in Pakistan, an elite cream of the crop place in society there. He gets an H-1B visa to the United States a couple of years ago and goes to work for the Mayo Clinic as a research coordinator. Almost from the day he shows up, he's talking jihad. He regards that he is now behind enemy lines, a rare place for a jihadist to be. He's with ISIS. He's pledging allegiance to ISIS. He hates all of the kuffars that are around him, the infidels. They all deserve death. He wants to kill them. He wants to get killed. And all the while, he's at the Mayo Clinic posing as like a nice guy. He's saying, I hate having to smile at these people that are kuffars and infidels, but I have to do it for operational security. He's talking online to people that he thought were ISIS jihadis. Instead, they were undercover FBI informants, thank God, or an actual FBI agent as well. And that's how we know all of this. He decides to conduct his attack in the United States at first, meaning he was going to probably kill people at the clinic, at the Mayo Clinic. And for some unknown reason, he changed his plan and decided to go overseas and join ISIS in either Iran or Afghanistan with the Khorasan groups over there. And as he was boarding his flight to embark on this trip, the FBI thankfully arrested him, and now that guy's in jail. It has to be, it's not mentioned in the court records on this case, and of course the DOJ won't talk to me about it. I called them, but clearly this doctor had to have been very aware. This was happening in February and March of the coronavirus and the lockdowns, and the fact that the doctors all around him must have been very busy and involved and engaged in the corona response here. It's not mentioned in the court records, but this is a guy who took his Hippocratic oath and interpreted it in an entirely different way.
Well, so, Marie Harf, the press secretary for Barack Obama several years ago, made the point in a press conference that the only reason that these ISIS terrorists do what they do is because they don't have jobs. And if we would just help them get jobs, we wouldn't have to deal with this kind of terrorism anymore. This guy is a licensed physician. He's a surgeon, and he was given a visa to come to the United States and work. He had a good paying job. So that sort of gives the lie to Marie Harf's comments. And it just kind of, again, goes to show you that ideology trumps everything in a person's life. And that the ideology of prosperity, of comfort, really cannot supplant this 4th century ideology of violence and death in people's lives when they are sold out to it.
Look, Ayman Zawahiri, who is the head of Al-Qaeda, is a medical doctor. If you look at studies of demographics of Islamic terrorists, you'll find that a large proportion of them, a surprising proportion of them, are highly trained medical doctors, physicians, engineers, successful businessmen. Look, Osama bin Laden was an heir to a fortune, was trained in the best schools. This idea that, impoverished, people with no other options gravitate to jihad is just simply not true. 10 years ago, there was a plot in London. They call it the physicians plot. There were 8 physicians from Iraq and from those countries of national security interest who all conspired to blow up the Glasgow airport and conduct bombings throughout London. Every one of them was a doctor, a medical doctor. So, I mean, this is just patently ridiculous. That
it really is.
Yeah.
So, what do you have on your radar for the Center for Immigration Studies as far as what you'd like to do next and what you'd like to, you and I were down in Guatemala and Mexico in January. What do you see coming up once you can travel again?
Yeah, I'm sort of looking around. I've been trapped in the house like everybody else, but right now I'm writing a piece. It should be out in a couple days about the Canadian border. I was looking at a smuggling case of an Iraqi taxi driver who was bringing in clients out of Canada over the Vermont state border. Mm-hmm. And once I got looking into that case, I saw that in the court records that his van was filled with Mexicans. So he had Mexican nationals coming in from Canada. So once I started digging around in that, and you can read this in a couple of days, I noticed that that the Trudeau administration dropped the visa requirement for Mexicans. So if you're Mexican, you can just board a flight and go anywhere in Canada, and you don't need a visa or a passport or anything. You just show up. And so as soon as that happened, we started seeing thousands of Mexicans being apprehended by our border patrol on the northern border, not the southern border, the northern border, which is far less, border patrol populated.
Right.
And then also
I did a report down there one time. They said that they've got one border patrol agent on the northern border for every 13 miles of border. That makes it a little bit tough to cover, especially when you got 3 shifts. So basically triple that, almost 40 miles of border for every on-duty border patrol agent to patrol, to try to cover. And that includes administrative people and stuff like that, so that there's no way. I mean, we've got almost 4,000 miles of border with Canada. Much of it is wilderness. A lot of it has zero barrier or any kind of fence at all. And so, yeah, it's virtually impossible to police that border.
Yeah. And, the other thing that I came across in researching this is that the Canadians, since they dropped the visa requirement, are now noting hundreds and hundreds of Mexican cartel operatives using that new system to fly into Canada with their smugglers and their sicarios and all the rest of it. And with Mexicans crossing the border, you have to wonder if the Mexican cartels have found a new way in.
Right.
So
big surprise there. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. Todd Bensman, Center for Immigration Studies, a senior fellow up there, right? And so I really appreciate it. I hope we get a chance to travel some more. Really enjoyed it. And we'll get you back on again here soon. Yeah, that was a great trip down there to Chiapas and Guatemala. Yeah, it sure was. Yeah, we'll have to do that again sometime. All right. God bless you. And thanks a lot. Folks, thanks for watching the Hot Zone. You can support the podcast by going to patreon.com/hotzone. Buy me a cup of coffee every month. You get access to lots of extra footage and stuff that I am not even allowed to show you on the public space. You're going to like that a lot. So again, patreon.com/hotzone. Thanks for watching.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.